Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. We'll be starting soon. Hi, welcome to my presentation today. Today we are talking about being a UI designer, how to develop UI design. In last weeks, we talked about how to listen to users, how to convert UX findings to UI design, how to develop UI design is today's topic. So first we start with different segmentation and how to talk to different segment of people and how to collect their insights and analyze their insights. After that, we talk how we can find the UX findings we got from that interactions, then how we can plan a UI design based on that information. Now we will talk about how to develop UI design. In today's session, we'll talk about wireframe, developing the wireframe. It includes shapes and size, what are the things to be considered, and inclusive design, how to include all category of people to the design, or how to consider their requirements in the design, then designing rules. What are the rules we have to follow? Then in mockups, we talk about color selection, then semiotics, that is sign language. Then in interactive design, we'll talk about designing tools. As I said in all my presentations, I talk about innovation journey. Innovation journey start from ideation, then concept, then designing look and feel, rapid prototyping, evaluating MVP, and market feedback. This stage shows the total innovation journey of a product or service or process or business model. UI designer works in designing look and feel. That's the stage where the UI designer will contribute to the innovation journey. As I said earlier, UI design is a part of product design. So UI designer should synchronize his work with the product designer, and main duty of the UI designer is designing look and feel. So in my presentation, I will talk about how to listen, how to design, how to develop, how to deploy, and how to measure UX and UI. Today we are talking about developing UI design. Of course, you are free to share my presentation to your colleagues and friends, and I expect your comments, questions, and if you like my presentations, you can do it in the comment box or you can share to your friends. Okay, coming back to today's topic, wireframing. What is the importance of shapes and size? Do not think that I'm talking only about digital design or the shapes and size depends on is connected to digital designs or web designs or mobile app designs. Shapes and size is also important in physical products. Think about the interactive knobs in a car or in your kitchen equipments. The shapes and size are so important. So what shape or what size you have to select for your interface? That is one of the important concern while you start wireframing. Anyway, wireframing is the first stage of UI design. You have to start, you have to develop a wireframe of the interface you are planning to design according to all the information you have from the interaction with the UI designer. Sorry, the interaction with users and the development of persona in the second stage, the planning stage, you develop different persona. Depending on this information, we had to develop as a UI designer, you have to develop wireframing. That's the first stage of designing. So, shapes and size. One of the important consideration or one of the important rules of the shape. Okay, you can use any shapes for your interface. Now, I'm not talking about the shape and size of the total interface. That depends on the screen size. That depends on the space available in the equipment, or the monitor is already provided. There is a total shape and size. Maybe in a phone, there's a different sizes available, or in a tab, different sizes available, laptop, or in a kitchen equipment, you have different sizes. That is okay with the size of the product. But I'm talking about shape and size of the components inside that. For example, what should be the size of a particular knob? What should be the size of a particular window inside your product? The best thumb rule is always depend on persona. Persona plays a major role in designing. As I uh, always advocates, you have to design for different personas, and you have to keep the persona in your mind while designing. Don't depend on your intuitions. So the persona means the person who is going to use your product. You are defining the person who is going to use your product, actually the representation of targeted segment of your users. Better go for square and round shapes. If you are designing for 10 years and lower, and 60 years and above, also better to go for round and squares. In between that, especially in the middle age, 20 to 30, you can use any shapes. Because of the age and their biological factors, they could not identify or they could not differentiate different shapes. If they can't differentiate between different shapes, the communication you are conveying through that shape may have errors. So better go for the different shapes or variety of shapes. If your persona is in middle age, and for the elders and youngsters means teens. I'm not talking about the teens, it's around 10 years. So it's better go for squares and round shapes. Okay, how you can do this type of differentiation in your design? Based on the persona, or you have to design for different persona, and based on the persona, they can select what the interface they need. It depends on the registration process of the user, or you can use any different methods to get what type of user is in front of the product or who is using it now. Based on that, you can change the interface or shapes. Then comes to size, especially the font size. Same principle is applied. So bigger fonts to be used for users around 10 years, also for 60 years, but smaller fonts you can use between 20 and 30. So the size of the font also depends on persona. These are two simple thumb rules you have to follow. While you define the persona, define the age, then select the size and shape. Next, we comes to inclusive design. What is inclusive design? Inclusive design talks about how you are including people with all disabilities. For example, you already selected one persona, maybe your persona is between 20 to 30 years. Still, you can find a group of people have permanent disabilities. They have restrictions to use your product, temporary disabilities, and situational disabilities. What it is? Permanent disabilities, we know they are naturally disabled, or sometimes by accident or some other tragedies happen to their life and they could not perform as a normal human being, and they're permanently disabled. Maybe in the touch they have one arm, example, one arm or something. That's called permanent disability, or touch, or they can't see properly, they can't hear, speak. What is temporary disability? It's mainly medical condition because of some temporary things happen to them, so they can't do touch, see, hear, or speak. They are restricted temporarily. These are temporary disabilities. Then the third is situational. That is more important when you design your product, because for the permanent disabilities we know how to design a product for permanent disabled people, because the product is specifically meant for them, or we can include them, and it's very the percentage of people is having permanent disability is very low compared to the total population we are targeting. And temporary disability is a matter of time, so after that they will recover from that. That also people can accommodate. What about the situational disability? That's really interesting. What it is actually, situational disability. Because of the environment, the user is disabled. For example, a new parent, a mom carrying kid, she's disabled at that moment. A driver is disabled while he's driving. A person inside a environment have loud voice is disabled. These are the different situations. People are disabled because of that environment. So look into these situations. As I said, a person after shopping with lot of products carrying, how the person can book a Uber. So the user is disabled at that moment because the user is carrying a lot of product in her hand, so he can't operate, she can't operate phone. So that means that at that moment, the user is disabled. Look at a mom carrying a kid and she want to use phone or anything. She's disabled because one arm is reserved for carrying the kid. Think about a driver. So this is called situational disability. We have to include these into design because this is a surprising fact that 78 percentage of the daytime you are disabled. A user is disabled. Situational disability affects 78% of daytime of a user. This is really interesting fact, and 78% of daytime, that means you have to consider it very seriously, because the user has to use your product in between. For example, you are designing an app, you are designing a product. So 78% of the daytime he is engaged with some other activity. In between that user has to use your product. So UI designer should consider this fact. And whatever shapes and size and uh, business processes he's including inside the product or inside the app, the UI designer has to consider this fact. So how a user can operate your app with one arm? Or how a operator can operate your equipment in 3 seconds time, within 3 seconds. That's one of the thumb rule we use in driving, because if it's more than 3 seconds, driver get distracted. So avoid that. And how easily he can identify the knobs without looking to that. These are the facts, these are the situational conditions you have to consider while designing. Again, it depends on your product and what environment is using and what complexity is using. But UI designer should keep this in mind. Whatever you are designing, the process, the shape, the size, even though you are designing for 20 to 30 years of age, don't use a very small font size um, in a car interface, because he has to concentrate on that screen, then only he can read what it is. So it will be distracting from driving. So don't use these type of designs, because we know that, okay, 20 to 30 years of age people, they are very sharp in reading, that's okay, but think about it, he's distracted because of the environment. That should be considered. So always keep in mind that 78% of daytime a user is distracted. Then comes to designing rules. I already had a detailed presentation on designing rules. That is Jacob Norman's 10 usability heuristics. You can refer that video. So I'm just briefing it here. These are the rules you had to follow while preparing the design. So especially when you start with wireframing, you have to follow these rules. What it is? Visibility of system status. You have to give the status of the system to the user, whether it is uploading, whether it is deleting or trying something. You have to use some way, some with colors or the messages. You have to interact with users and show what is happening. Otherwise, users feel that your system is get hanged and they have no idea what is happening inside your system. Then match between the system and the real world. So whatever communication you are using with the interacting with the user, it should match with the real world communication or real world usage or accent or sentences they are familiar with. Then user control and freedom. User have the control to do anything. So user makes mistakes. So the system should provide the exit or come back to the previous situation. That is very important. You have to consider that fact while designing the screens or the controls. Then consistency and standards. You have to keep colors and shapes and language in a consistent form. The fifth one is error prevention. Prevent errors before user commit mistakes. So some situation you have to do the double check or the process to be designed to prevent errors, like taking the password 2 times, or a lot of situations you can avoid errors by inviting more attention by the users to the environment of interaction. Then recognition rather than recall. So don't allow users to remember everything, or don't expect the remembering uh, of the previous screens or previous actions by the user. So recognize rather than recall. So you have to show what is the system status. Then flexibility and efficiency of use. So users should be flexible and your product should be flexible and efficient to use. Aesthetic and minimalist design. Don't make a complex design. This should be very simple design. People have a lot of other works to do instead of solving your puzzles in the design. So how to finding the knob to do something. They have no time to do that. So it should be clear. Help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. Still, people will make mistakes. Then identify the errors and give the assistance to come out from the errors. These then next is help and documentation. These rules to be implemented in the design. Don't keep these as another document or explanatory document. No. So while you use any icons or any controls, you have to follow these rules because when the user is going to delete, you have to take the confirmation. Are you want to delete? Or they do something in error, you have to show that there is an error in maybe in red color. So these type of screens you have to design. If you avoid these rules, your designs or your screens will reduce to 50%. Look into a mobile design or a interface design. 50% of screens are used to follow these rules. Otherwise, just look into a login screen. You are taking the username, then password 2 times, then showing that okay, you are logged in or you are failed to log in, your password is incorrect, or you have to use these characters in your password, your section timeout, different password of different login options. Look into these facts. You are implementing in just one screen for password. Most of the screens you are showing while user is doing login is following these rules to compliance with these rules. So that's why I'm saying that whenever you design a interface, 50% of the screens you are using, 50% of the message you are using is to fulfill these 10 usability heuristics. That's why the designing rules are so important, and we have to follow these rules in every part of design. You have to implement these rules in wireframing stage itself. So you can see a wireframe for the demonstrative purpose. I'm showing a wireframe. So mostly wireframes avoid colors and just give some layouts, how it works. It gives a feel of what are the things in it. Okay, this is a way of designing wireframes. Just show the shapes and size and rules. Then the next stage comes in mockups. Mockups mainly talk about colors because after wireframing, you have to add colors to your design. That's the second stage for designing. The colors should be selected based on persona. Still, I'm always focusing on the persona, that is the targeted users you are planning to deliver this product, or the targeted users you are focusing as a user for your product. So you have to define different persona. In the previous stage or previous presentation, as I explained, you have already defined different persona. Depending on the persona, you have to select colors. For example, youngsters, teens, and kids, you can use vibrant colors, but elders is better go for plain colors. For senior citizens, it's better go for black and white because because of their age, they could not differentiate between colors. If something you are conveying based on colors is very difficult to understand, so use only the basic colors. Don't go for very minute changes in colors and try to communicate something. So the color selection is based on persona. So you can use the same rule, who is in front of the product. Based on that, your interface can be changed. So that these type of things you can put in the settings. Especially in a digital environment, is very easy. Based on the login, you can set these colors and shapes. But in physical environment, you can ask a questions in what mode you have to start this product. So that is one of the easiest way. Maybe in some cars we can look that is economy mode or sporty mode. That's the same way you can start. Most of the premium cars now we have the profile saved, so you can select that profile in particular profile. This is actually a persona. So select that profile and start the system, or select profile 2 and start the system. Select elders profile and start the system. So it will set according to all the colors, shapes, and everything will be set according to this type of designs you have to implement in your UI design. Otherwise, you have nothing to design. Actually, when I talk frankly, you have nothing to design if you are not considering these factors. It's just one screen, is a plain screen login. That's all. But the login screen is changing based on the age. Login screen is changing based on the culture. Login change. So in total, we can say the login screen is changing based on persona. When a user select teens persona, a login screen is changing. When a user selects senior citizens persona, the login screen changes. That is a real task you have to do in UI design, because your UI design should match with the user in front of the product. It should be perfectly synchronized with the user. Then only you can create a emotionally attached experience and a good experience to the user. So that is the duty of UI design. Otherwise, why should a product designer needs a UI designer? Product designer or any person can design the interface. That's very easy. So as a UI designer, you have to consider the targeted users, develop the personas, and based on the persona, the interactive screens to be developed. Otherwise, the company need not require the UI designer. That's a fact you have to keep in mind. So again, the UI designing process should not be start with or should not be concluded with your intuitions, UI designer's intuitions. It should match with the persona of the targeted segments. Okay, then we can talk about semiotics. That's a really very interesting topic. Semiotics talks about signs that communicate something. You can see a lot of signs here. Also here, you can see a lot of signs. This is the way you have to communicate. So you can use signs without the explanation, or we can use with the explanation. So most of the time, we are interacting with these signs without explanations. That area of science or interaction is called semiotics. So it talk about science. Talk about science without linguistics. There is a difference between linguistics design and semiotics. Linguistics always talk about language. Here we talk about science. So semiotics, most of the time we are interacting using these signs. Think about these popular signs. You are interacting how many times in a day you are interacting with signs. Look into any of these signs, phone or Wi-Fi, fire, restrooms. If I am driving red, yellow, green, that's the most popular universal sign. Recycling, currency, okay, traffic signals, everything is based on signs. People won't read. Don't put on explanatory notes. People won't read. People look into the sign. So your signs, you should talk the universal language. And most of the time we are interacting with the signs, especially in this digital age. You can look into the screens in front of you, especially you are driving, you can see the screens. There is nothing. You can't understand without these signs. Look into the different signs a car dashboard is showing. So you know all these signs in different colors, and it's clearly communicate what is happening in the system. So talk the user based on signs. That is very interesting. That is area is called semiotics. UI designer can specialize this area. So look into any product in front of you, a kitchen equipment. What sign it shows? So think about it. If something is red in red, you will be vigilant. You know that there is a danger. And if something is in yellow, you have to be curious, or you have to need it, system needs an attention. And green is okay to go. So these are the universal colors used in that stage. Also signs. Look into the another digital product. Everything is on sign. Not only the standard signs, they are using a lot of other signs to interact. And in social media, stock on sign. Look into the chat, look at the Wi-Fi, look into the shopping basket, look into the home, look to mail sign. So look to your screen and understand how many times you are interacting using only sign. So now it's a common practice in your daily life. Communicate with sign. That is sign language. So sign should be universally accepted. The user should get the clear communication using that sign, and should have a proper color. Color also contribute to that communication. There should be a universal sign and the product specific signs. Think about the logo of most of the global companies. When you see that logo, you understood what it is. For example, the case of Apple. Now people don't think that is a natural apple. So when you see that logo, people are associating it with a brand, not with the natural apple. So that's a way the company communicates their brand through signs. Look into any global brands, you can see, especially McDonald's, KFC. Some companies will write their brand name along with that sign, but most of the companies avoid that because you don't expect everyone can understand your English. So most of the people may not be comfortable in reading words in English. Some can speak, but most of the people can't read. So sign language and develop your product in a consistent way. Your UI should use a consistent way on signs. So don't use one sign here and different sign in another screen for the same purpose. This is called consistency. And you have to keen on using the signs, colors of the signs. It's a very interesting area of science. Not only for UI design, the signs are used everywhere. Not only for UI designs. Think about where there is a communication, there is a sign. Look into the traffic signs. Look into the road signs. some signs are migrating to another area because of similarity. For example, right. Actually, the right talk about right side in traffic, but in digital design, using the same thing for true, left, false. So this is the way the sign language develops. So it should communicate the global language or universal language, and it should be understandable to all the users. Okay, coming to designing tools. So what are the tools you have to use for designing? So designing mainly talk about wireframing, mockups, and UI design. And what are the designing tools? There are different tools. I'm not advocating or I'm not promoting any of these tools, but I'm using all these tools in our company. UiZad, Figma, or Adobe XD and Canva. There are a lot of other tools also available. These are the popular tools. UiZad, Figma, and Adobe XD work almost similar, or 90% similar. Maybe the 10% of commands or facilities they are providing in a different way. What I notice is these three platforms are good for programmers. A programmer turned to UI designer. These three platforms are good. But I really love to use Canva because it's an artistic platform. UI design is an art backed by science. It's not science backed by art. It should be as art backed by science. So artistic, aesthetic part is important in a design. Better go for Canva. So initially I was using UiZad, Figma, and all these products. Now I always use Canva because it's a huge library and facility to do the prototype. It's providing is really interesting and really flexible to use. Look into my presentation also. I'm not using any PowerPoint. I'm not using any Google Slides. I'm doing this presentation in Canva. This these slides are prepared in Canva. So look to my wireframes or designs I showed. Some are in Canva and some are in UiSAD and Figma. So, but nowadays I'm always insist UI designer to use Canva because it's more near to the real product. When you use prototyping, it is more near to the real product. Okay, you can use anything. So UiSAD and Figma more towards the designing, that is having programming windows. So when you use some commands or some icons, it will give you a programming part also. So you can continue from the programming, but actually that is not a very useful um, facility because programming is mainly depend on the back-end design and front-end design, as well as the technology design and the logic and the environment that these type of softwares can't cater to, that a complex environment of algorithms can just give some commands or some connectivity. That is not at all useful. I never used it. I won't recommend a programmer to use that facility. Always keep in mind that UI design is an art backed by science. So don't give much importance to the opinion of programmer. Look to the user. That is to be prioritized above the technology. Technology should support the user needs, not in the other way. If you do it another way, users won't do that. So user needs should be supported by technology. If that technology is not working, you can use another technology. That's all. But user needs is important. So keep the users in front of your design and complete the design. Don't put the programmer in front of your design and complete the design. That's very easy. Put the user in front of you, then complete the design. So that's why I am saying that always look into the artistic part of the design, because the artistic and aesthetic part gives the emotional attachment to the user, and it provides, it triggers a good user experience. Again, I am saying that if you can't give the user experience with your interface, then there is no need for UI designer in the product development process. So UI designer has to concentrate on the targeted users and their needs. Okay, you can see a complete design. So all the icons are working, all the screens and data. So you had to, as a UI designer, you have to do all these part in an interactive form. How much you can go near to the real product, that shows your design skills and visualizing skill, especially visualizing. So you have to visualize the product before developing the real product. You have to visualize it. So your visualizing capability shows how near to the real product which is going to use by the UI designer. Every part to be designed, like settings, screens, all the connectivity, including colors, layouts, etc. If you are going to design for mobile, you have to design in that way. This is for laptop design. Like that, whatever interfaces you are using, you have to design for each interface. Then do design for each persona. So many times I explain. So whatever designs you develop, you design separately for different use persona. So as a programmer, they will say that, okay, what persona you need, you can select based on persona, or they will set the persona based on login, because the login is already there as a registration. Your details are there. So you can select based on the login. Otherwise, in physical products, it's better to start with different profiles. As a UI designer, consider all these profiles and do the design based on each persona. So whatever you are designing for the same backend or same process, you have to consider user is in front of you and give the user interface according to the user's needs. That's the reason we are talking about different UI design for each persona. Otherwise, think about it. You have a product, you have one interface design, UI design. So that's very simple. So that's understand the work of UI designer in a product design scenario. If we just need a interface design, actually we need not require UI designer. So UI designer should consider UI required for each persona and design according to that. So whether we need different design for each persona, or some personas to be combined, or how many interface designs we required in catering the entire society or entire targeted people. So based on that, UI designer has to design. Otherwise, it will be an extension of backend. Most of the UI, why I'm saying again and again, most of the UI designers think that, okay, I have to just draw some screens, then give to the programmer. That's my work. For that purpose, you need not require a UI designer. A company need not require a UI designer for that limited assignments. The backend programmer will do that. UI designer has to consider the targeted user and its persona, then design. Okay, this is the important facts you have to consider while you use paint and brush. Wireframing. What are the things you have to consider? Shape, size, based on persona. Do inclusive design, care permanent, temporary, and situational disabilities. That will learn about these situations of a user, especially the 78% of the day a user is having situational disabilities. The only way to learn is interact with users. Otherwise, listen to users. Otherwise, there's no option to learn this situation. Then follow the usability heuristics. These are the important facts or important methods you have to follow during wireframing. Wireframing is the start point and the basic part of your UI design. Then comes to mockups. Mockups mainly talk about colors. Colors again based on the user needs. Follow semiotics and its principles. Don't show any assigns according to your convenience to any commands. Use the universal language of signs. Okay, then position also universal way of, because what should be positioned in the left side, what should be positioned in the right side, everything you have to consider while semiotics. Then develop the design using any of the tools. I'm not because you are a UI designer, you know all these tools better than me. So I'm not interested to demonstrate one particular command in that tool, so you can explore it. I'm not interested to do that. But some tools have the AI based support. That is, when you draw something in your paper, then show to the camera will scan it and convert to wireframe, because wireframe most of the people starts from pen and paper, so that's the easiest way. Then most of the some tools have that facility, convert wireframes to vector design using AI. But okay, these are the different facilities the companies providing, different brands are providing. Some have more designing capabilities, some are more into programming capabilities. But one thing you have to keep in mind, that I always recommend to use artistic designs. Even though you are not using any of these tools, you can do a good UI design, not a big thing. Even the element, I use Elementor is a part of WordPress. I'm using it for UI design, because it's more near to the real environment than these tools. So it depends. So some product designers, while do the physical product, you have to develop a scale down design. That's also possible. Scale down design to show the three-dimensional aspects. Otherwise, you can use some digital three-dimensional digital tools, which is used for three-dimensional development. So the tools, you have a lot of tools in front of you, so you can use any tools according to your convenience. Better to learn most of the tools, better to learn almost all the tools, and use the tools whatever you require, depending on the interface you are going to design and your product. Okay, it's a website, is better go for Elementor. I always recommend that. Don't use any of these tools. Go to Elementor if you are designing a website. If you are designing more into administrative part of the software, go for Figma or UiSAT. If you are going to more artistic part of the front end, or you can use Canva. So you can use multiple tools for in same project. So I won't look into which tool UI designer is using. So what the design is, how much the design is near to the real product. That's the only thing we had to do. I had to check. Then do the design for each persona. So these are the three important stages of designing: wireframing, mockups, and UI design. The UI design always should be interactive. In wireframe, it should not be interactive. It can be static. Mockups, it will be adding colors and shapes and adding colors and colors and different personas and signs. That is called mockups. Then it should be interactive while we talk about UI design. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. So being a UI designer, now we completed 3 sessions. First, I talk about how to listen to users. The second, I talk about how to convert UI findings to UI design. Now, I was talking about how to develop UI design. I hope all these steps are clear to you, and you can refer my previous videos, especially for 10 heuristics of UI design. That's a I have done only exclusive presentation on that topic, only for the 10 rules. I have done exclusive presentation. Also, I have done different presentation for listening, converting, now developing. And next week, again, I'll come with next stage. Do you have questions? Please air your questions in the comment box. So I will get back to you, or I will answer it now, or later on also you can add questions. I'll get back to you. Thank you so much. You can like or share my presentation to your team. Okay, waiting for questions. Okay, a really interesting question. Yes, I'm a product designer. That's right. I'll design a lot of products. But when a UI designer submit a design to me for finalizing, what I look first? Okay, that's a really interesting question. So if a UI designer submit a design to me, what I look first? Immediately, I will change my role to a client role as a user's role. As a user, the first question is whether I will use this product with this design. So the UI designer is showing the front end. So whether I will use this product, that's my first question in my mind. For more details, you can go through a presentation on cognitive walkthroughs. That is the best method you have to check UI design. So cognitive, you have to go through the cognitive walkthroughs, whether as a user, whether you can go through each step. As a programmer, you can go through, or a engineer, you can go through. But think about a simple user you are targeting. So whether that person with that knowledge or with that education, whether he can use that product or he can operate the product without any assistance. That is what we have to check. So best option is go to cognitive walkthroughs methods for testing. Of course, I am coming with a lot of measuring methods in future. In future presentations, it will come. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your time. See you next week.